Hi there, I'm Jennifer, just your average straightforward person with quite a tale to share. It's a story of heartbreak, resilience, and unexpected strength. A few years ago, life threw me a curveball I never saw coming. My husband Frank and I were living what seemed like the perfect life. Our cozy suburban home, our dog Billy, and dreams of starting a family. But then, out of nowhere, our lives took a sharp turn. I experienced a miscarriage that hit us like a relentless blow, shaking us to our core and challenging our marriage. We suddenly found ourselves lost in a whirlwind of pain and confusion. Frank and I had always been a solid team, committed to facing life's challenges together. However, this loss cast a shadow over us, infiltrating every aspect of our relationship. Conversations turned into arguments, simple joys felt elusive, and the intimacy we once shared began to fade. Adding to the strain was my mother-in-law, Betty, who had been eager for grandchildren since the day we tied the knot. The pressure from her felt like a ticking clock, amplifying our already heavy hearts. Despite countless doctor visits and treatments, my fertility issues persisted. The emotional roller coaster of hope and despair was overwhelming, with each positive test leading to crushing heartbreak. I vividly recall the devastating conversations with Frank where our frustration and hope spilled out in equal measure. "It's not fair, Jennifer. We've tried so hard," he'd say, his voice thick with disappointment. "I know, Frank. I never wanted this," I would reply, feeling the weight of our shared dreams crumbling around us. Life seemed determined to challenge us, and with each passing year, the burden grew heavier. Friends and family offered their support, but the journey of trying to conceive remained daunting, a profound weight that loomed over us, growing more burdensome as time marched on. Yet through these trials, Frank and I discovered the depths of our strength and the resilience of our bond. Our path wasn't easy, but it was ours, filled with lessons about love, hardship, and the intricate journey of life. It didn't go unnoticed by friends and family that we were still childless. Their well-meaning inquiries about when we might welcome a little one often felt more like pressure than support. But Betty took it to another level entirely. Every family gathering with her turned into a relentless interrogation about our plans to start a family. It often felt as if she were pointing the finger at me, as though the absence of children rested solely on my shoulders, especially given my fertility struggles. "Jennifer, it's so lovely to see you. How have you been?" Betty would begin sweetly. "I've been good, Betty. Thanks for asking," I would reply, bracing myself for what came next. "Any good news to share? How about a little one on the way?" "Betty, we've talked about this. We're still trying, but it's not that simple," I'd respond, trying to keep my frustration at bay. Trying to keep my tone light. "Oh dear, are you sure you're doing everything right? You've been married for quite some time now. Maybe it's time to see a specialist." "Yes, Betty, we've seen specialists. We're doing everything we can. It's just not happening as easily as you might think." "Well, maybe you should try some natural remedies. I've heard that herbal teas in certain positions can help. I really want a grandbaby." "Betty, this is a private matter. We're handling it the best we can," I'd insist, hoping to steer the conversation away. "Oh please, private? We're family. We should be able to discuss these things openly." "I understand that, Betty, but let's just enjoy our time together today without discussing this, okay?" "All right, dear, but tick-tock, time is wasting, and soon you will be able to have kids." "I'll keep that in mind, Betty." It was always like this. I felt an immense weight of pressure and shame for not meeting her expectations of a perfect daughter-in-law who would bless her with grandchildren. Ironically, she never imposed such expectations on her own daughter, who wasn't even married yet and seemed to escape scrutiny. It was incredibly frustrating. This period in our lives was tremendously challenging. The pressure from Betty only continued to build, and it felt like she was constantly holding my fertility struggles against me. I could see the strain it was putting on both Frank and me. I suggested adoption several times, but Frank was adamant about having a biological child, which led to heated arguments between us. The tension from these discussions, coupled with external pressures, made everything even harder. I expressed to Frank how painful and unfair it felt to distinguish between biological and adopted children. As to me, all children deserve love equally. Yet he remained focused on having a biological child, a desire that weighed heavily on both our hearts. I couldn't shake the thought of the countless children out there longing for a family, which only deepened my sadness. As for Betty, her attitude escalated to overtly harsh territory. She relentlessly blamed me for her inability to have children, as if my fertility issues were something I could resolve with a little more effort. It created an unbearable situation where I was fighting to preserve my marriage while enduring constant judgment and reproach. It was an emotionally draining ordeal. Betty never hesitated to express her dissatisfaction. "Jennifer, you need to fix this and fast. You're the reason we don't have any grandchildren yet," she'd confront me. "Betty, I've been trying everything I can. It's not as simple as you think. I'm dealing with fertility issues," I'd reply, my patience wearing thin. "Well, you need to try harder. We can't let our family line end with you," she retorted, her fixation feeling almost dystopian, as if she expected me to fulfill some sort of Handmaid's Tale scenario. Overwhelmed, I decided to seek some insight from my sister-in-law, Amy, who always seemed more empathetic. "Amy, I don't understand why your mom is so fixated on me having a baby. It's not entirely under my control, and she's making my life miserable." I confided in Amy, hoping for clarity. "Jennifer, it's not just about grandkids," she hesitated, hinting at something deeper. After some coaxing, she revealed her troubling thoughts. "I overheard Mom talking to some family friends. She's worried that Frank might leave you for someone younger, someone who can have kids." "What? Frank would never do that. Why would you even think such a thing?" I was shocked. "I know you believe that, but remember, Frank was quite the ladies' man before. I didn't want to say anything because he's my brother, and I'm loyal to him. You're lucky I'm even sharing this with you," Amy admitted. "Honestly, I think Mom might have a point." "Yeah, Jennifer, time is ticking," she added, echoing the harsh reality looming over us. This revelation shook me deeply, intertwining my marital uncertainties with the invasive pressures from Betty and adding layers of complexity to an already strained relationship. Hearing about the possibility of Frank leaving me for someone younger left me staggered. Amy hinted at a younger coworker, an intern around 25 years old, with whom Frank seemed to enjoy chatting a bit too much. The thought that my husband could even consider leaving me, or worse, engaging with other women behind my back, was shattering. My heart felt like it was being torn apart by the potential betrayal. After grappling with my suspicions and the agony they caused, I reached a breaking point. The distance between Frank and me had widened into an unbridgeable chasm, and I knew it was time for a confrontation. One evening, sensing my withdrawal and standoffishness, Frank asked me about it. Overwhelmed by pain and frustration, I confronted him directly about his fidelity. Initially, Frank denied everything, as anyone might in such a shocking situation, but as the conversation wore on, he eventually confessed to his indiscretions. The revelation of his affair with a younger coworker unleashed a torrent of emotions within me. In a moment of intense anger and hurt, I slapped him, a stark reflection of the pain he had inflicted. Frank's reaction was predictably mixed with pleas and requests for forgiveness, but I could see right through it. Over the years, I had built a stable and prosperous life for myself, making wise financial decisions and advancing in my career. It dawned on me that Frank might have been holding on to our failing marriage, not just out of love or a desire for a child, but perhaps also to secure a financial safety net through potential child support payments in the event of a divorce. Feeling manipulated and used, I declared that I wanted a divorce. I was exhausted by the deceit and emotional turmoil. "How could you, Frank? How could you betray me like this?" I demanded, my voice shaking with disbelief. "Jennifer, please just listen. I messed up. I know I did. I'm so sorry," he pleaded, desperation dripping from his words. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Frank. You cheated on me with someone from your office." I shot back, my rage bubbling to the surface. "Jennifer, you have to understand. I was feeling so inadequate, so unfulfilled. I thought having a child would make me feel like I was worth something," he tried to explain. "Oh, so you thought cheating on your wife was the solution? Did you really believe that sleeping with someone else would magically make you a better person?" My disbelief turned to scorn as I confronted him. In that moment, the truth of our situation became painfully clear. Frank's betrayal wasn't just a lapse in judgment, it was a deliberate choice that shattered the foundation of our marriage. "No, of course not. I was foolish to think that way. I didn't know what else to do." Frank stammered, his desperation evident. "You didn't know what to do, so you chose to hurt me instead. Do you even realize the pain you've caused?" My voice was filled with disbelief and hurt. "Jennifer, I can't lose you. Please let me make this right. I'll do anything," he begged, his voice cracking with emotion. "Do you really think you can undo this with a few hollow promises? You need to grow up, Frank, and take responsibility for your actions," I replied sternly, my resolve hardening. As I sat in the lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers, a profound sense of relief washed over me. The weight of a broken marriage and the sting of Frank's betrayal were finally lifting, and I could breathe freely again. Despite Betty and Amy's attempts to convince me otherwise, their pleas couldn't mask the deceit they too had harbored. I knew what was right for me, and staying with a man who had been unfaithful was no longer an option. With the prenuptial agreement in place, the divorce proceedings were swift. I retained the house, my sanctuary where I could start anew. Frank, on the other hand, had to move back in with his mother, a situation he found far from ideal. The day the divorce was finalized, I left the lawyer's office feeling liberated from a toxic relationship. But as I drove home, a sudden wave of nausea overwhelmed me. I quickly pulled over, stumbled out of the car, and barely made it to the roadside before I threw up. The twisting in my stomach felt like the emotional toll of the divorce finally catching up with me. But as the nausea persisted over the following days, I realized this was only the beginning of my journey. I started to suspect there was more to this situation. The very next day, I was jolted awake by the incessant ringing of my doorbell. To my dismay, it was Frank, Betty, and Amy causing a commotion outside. They barged into my home uninvited, shouting about the prenuptial agreement and how it was unfair to leave Frank with so little, given my financial status. Betty wasted no time in cutting to the chase. "Jennifer, we're here to collect some money as compensation for all the years Frank wasted with you," she declared brazenly. "Have you lost your mind? Don't you realize the divorce is finalized?" I retorted, incredulous at their audacity and the absurdity of their demands. Their presence in my home, making such outrageous claims, was the last thing I needed after everything that had transpired. "I don't owe him anything," I insisted, my voice rising with frustration. "Sure, but this sounds like some sort of side deal, right?" Frank argued, trying to justify his demand. "A side deal?" I echoed, incredulous. "Yes," he insisted. "Jennifer, you've put me through a lot, and I need compensation. You're lucky we aren't taking this to court." Amy nodded in agreement beside him. "Yeah, he's been through so much stress because of you. We think $150,000 should cover it." I was stunned by their audacity. A fire ignited within me as I faced them, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Are you kidding me? Do you really think you deserve compensation for the years I spent trying to make our marriage work? If anything, I'm the one who deserves compensation." I knew Frank was practically broke and had no way to pay me anything, yet here they were, attempting to bully me into giving them money. Refusing to be intimidated, I declared, "The whole point of a prenup is to protect my assets. You need to leave my house immediately." But then a plan began to form in my mind, one that would truly shock them. "Wait just one moment. Before you go, I need to show you something." My heart pounded in anticipation as I hurried upstairs. When I returned, I held the pregnancy test in my trembling hand. Their eyes widened with shock and disbelief as they saw the positive result. As they passed the test around, I explained, "I threw up last night and decided to take the test on a whim." The result was unexpected, to say the least. Later today, I have a hospital appointment to determine how far along I am. Frank, Betty, and Amy stood there, jaws practically on the floor, unable to comprehend the twist of fate that had just unfolded before them. "You know what, Betty, Amy? Karma is a real piece of work, and I guess the universe decided it was time to bless me. I'm having a baby, but I'm no longer tied to any of you. The baby might be Frank's, but this baby is going to be all mine." "I will change my mind," I declared firmly. Betty and Amy exchanged worried glances before Betty spoke up, her voice tentative. "Jennifer, let's not be too hasty. We could work something out and discuss an arrangement." Frank finally found his voice, mumbling incoherent apologies, his eyes brimming with regret. But I wasn't interested in any of it. I had endured enough of their manipulation and toxicity. No more arrangements, no more excuses. Get off my property, all of you, before I call the police. "I'm done with this toxic circus," I stated resolutely, my decision. I could feel their desperation to change my mind. But after years of their emotional pressure, I was unwavering. I had built an emotional barrier that wouldn't be easily breached. In our tense standoff, Betty broke the silence, her voice tinged with desperation. "Jennifer, you have to understand that we care about this family. We want what's best for you and the baby. Frank may have made mistakes he knew about, by the way, but that's not important right now. He's the father, and he has a right to be in his child's life." "Yeah, Jennifer, you know how long we've been waiting for this. We can make this work. Trust me," she continued, trying to persuade me. I sighed, struggling to keep my composure. I understand your concern, but what you fail to grasp is that Frank's actions caused this rift in our marriage. He cheated on me. Betty, you're a smart woman. I'm sure you don't even believe what you're saying. You three are just trying to get into my life to access my money. That's ridiculous. Yes, I agree you're taking this too far, Frank chimed in, his voice shaky. Jennifer, I messed up big time. I regret what I did, and I'm willing to make amends for the sake of our child. Can't we try to work this out? I looked at him, my eyes filled with a mix of anger and sadness. Frank, this isn't just about your infidelity. It's about years of emotional manipulation and pressure from your mother and sister. I've endured so much because of your family, and I can't go back to that toxic environment. Amy tried a different approach, her voice softer, attempting to sound conciliatory. Jennifer, we admit we made mistakes too. We were too pushy, and we're sorry for that. But we only wanted what was best for you, even if we went about it the wrong way. Please, for the sake of the family, reconsider. But I wasn't swayed. Sure, Amy, but it doesn't change what happened. I've made my decision. I want a fresh start for myself and my child, away from the constant pressure and guilt trips. So, thanks, but no thanks. Clearly frustrated, Betty raised her voice. You're being unreasonable, Jennifer. You can't just cut us out like this. I took a deep breath, my patience wearing thin. I can and I will. My priority now is the well-being of my child, I asserted firmly. Their attempts at reconciliation felt shallow, and their motives were transparent. In that moment, I knew I needed to stand strong, not just for myself, but for the future of my child, free from the turmoil and the strings attached by Frank and his family. I've decided not to expose my child to such a toxic environment. You all need to leave. I won't change my mind, I stated, my voice resolute. Amy's eyes filled with tears as her voice trembled. Jennifer, please don't do this. We love you and want to be a part of your life and your baby's life. As I had mentioned before, you can have a relationship with the baby, but I will not compromise my happiness and mental health for anyone. Please, I don't want to repeat myself. I struggled to maintain my calm. Frank, who had been quietly weeping throughout the conversation, finally spoke up, his voice cracking with emotion. Jennifer, please reconsider. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I'm sorry about those girls. They meant nothing. I looked at him, feeling a pang for the man I once loved. Frank, it's too late for us. But you can still be a good father to our child. Just remember that actions speak louder than words. With that, I turned and walked away, locking the door behind them. Betty, Amy, and Frank stood there, their faces a mix of sadness and regret. It was time to start a new chapter in my life, one where I could breathe freely without the weight of their expectations and demands. Life had indeed taken a turn for the better. I had my beautiful baby girl, the center of my universe. She was healthy and thriving, a source of immeasurable joy. Each day spent with her filled my heart with love and gratitude. I decided to allow supervised visits with Frank, Betty, and Amy, believing my daughter deserved to know her father and connect with her paternal family. However, I set clear boundaries, expecting them to be respected. Yet every visit seemed to come with the same chorus of pleas and accusations. They insisted I was being selfish for not reuniting with Frank. The pressure and guilt tripping were relentless, wearing down my patience. One day, during another supervised visit, the familiar arguments erupted. Betty and Amy launched into their usual tirade about how I was tearing the family apart, claiming I was depriving my daughter of a complete family and that she deserved to have her parents together. I had had enough. After gently placing my baby girl in her crib, I turned to face them, my voice firm yet weary. I've been patient, I began, ready to reassert my boundaries and defend the peaceful life I had fought so hard to create for my daughter and myself. I've strived to maintain a civil relationship for the sake of our child, but the constant badgering and shouting are simply unacceptable. When Frank attempted to intervene, saying, Jennifer, please can't we talk about this? I firmly shook my head. No, Frank, this isn't up for debate. I've made my decision, and it's final. I won't tolerate this environment for our daughter. My resolve was clear. Betty and Amy exchanged frustrated glances but continued to argue, accusing me of being rigid and unreasonable. Taking a deep breath, I addressed them sternly. This is your last warning. If you can't respect my boundaries and continue to pressure me, you won't be allowed to see her anymore. I won't expose her to this toxic behavior. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Frank finally stepped in. Mom, Amy, please. We need to respect Jennifer's wishes. Our daughter deserves a peaceful and loving environment, he pleaded. Betty and Amy fell silent, their faces reflecting disappointment and resignation. It seemed they finally understood that their constant interference was only pushing them further away from their granddaughter. From that day forward, our visits became more peaceful. While they still harbored hopes for a reunion between Frank and me, they no longer pressed the issue. Although I could tell they were still remorseful, my focus remained elsewhere. I had more important things to prioritize: the well-being and happiness of my daughter, who continued to thrive. She was surrounded by love from people who genuinely cared about her well-being and mine. The change in dynamics allowed us to foster a calmer, more nurturing environment, free from previous tensions and conducive to her growth and happiness.